Hi people and hello my Chili and Carnage crew, it's Chili here from Live Listen Erase, bringing you the show without a name as of yet, but we are going to be talking of course about various aspects in music, from albums that I've listened to this week to music news, and of course upcoming releases that will be coming out today. But without further ado, I just want to give a quick shout out and say, people, this again is a show without a name. So I need a name for this show. Comment below and tell me what you think I should name it. That's probably not the worst thing that could happen, is it? I mean, we're only relying on the internet to come up with a name for this. It couldn't be any worse, could it? I'd be curious to see what people come back with. I can only imagine some of these answers. They're going to get creative. But regardless, we had some technical issues just prior. This episode actually should have been recorded 2 hours ago. Not that anyone really cares out there. But needless to say, a nice little uninstall and install got it back up and running. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it and just say, how's your week been, everyone? You been alright? Fantastic? Great. You know, I can hear everyone typing away. Now, the week that I've had was been pretty chilled, listening to a few albums, of course. The first one I just wanted to give a shout out to was the album Science by Incubus. Now, I went and dwelled back into this one because, you know, someone commented on a video that I made for the Incubus Worst to Best, and we're talking about the album 8. You know, they mentioned, oh, it's not the worst album, they thought, and, you know, I was not tempted to go back to 8 because, yes, I think that album is the worst one they've made. Go check out the episode in regards to what my thoughts are on the ranking of Incubus albums from worst to best. But I went back to check out Science, and damn, does this album slap harder than I really thought. You know, going back and listening to it and just going, oh my god, you know, it really goes into that new, I don't want to really use this too hard, but new metal kind of umbrella term. You know, it's a much heavier affair than, you know, the future stuff that they would release with, such as, you know, Make Yourself, especially Morning View. That one was much more mellow. You know, Science, it was deeply rooted in that early kind of days and that sound of that era being 1997. You kick things off with, you know, Redefine, Vitamin and New Skin, several other tracks as well that are probably worthwhile. Shout out to A Certain Shade of Green, and of course the major I think the track that doesn't seem to get, oh, this has got to be a major track surely, it just doesn't mention it here, but Summer Romance Anti-Gravity Love Song. And it was a track that for years anyway, I always got this one confused with Drive. It just kind of, I don't know why, I can't, I mean, they don't even sound alike, so I don't know why I always got confused when it came to these two, but I just always did. Anyway, but it's certainly a bit of a mix-up compared to the whole album, of course. You know, the heavier start to it, and, you know, Summer Romance kicks. By the time Summer Romance kicks in anyway, you know, it's all very chilled, relaxed, and I guess what Incubus were going to be moving forward. So anyway, that was Incubus with the Science and that album that I listened to. Another one that I listened to was also Rolling Stones, If You Want Live. Now, this one was a bit of an interesting one as well, because at the end of the day, of course, Rolling Stones have been around for decades in the industry, and this is actually quite a bit of an earlier record. I think it came out all the way back in 1965, if I'm remembering correctly, and, you know, got live If You Want It, I should say. And, you know, when it comes to this era of Rolling Stones, it's just before they really break through. You know, they've made a name within themselves within the industry. 1965 for Rolling Stones is still a very successful time, you know, for the period of the band. It's just not the global smash hits that they would have just a few years that came after this. But it's also a band that is starting to evolve and change and do their own kind of thing. If you're unaware, you know, they pretty much were a boy band from 1963 to 64, even up till 65. But around about 1965 and, you know, moving up to about 67, they really pushed the boundaries, trying different things, getting experimental, really getting in with the times as well that reflected it. Because you're all talking about the whole hippie counterculture period and psychedelica and all that crap was coming around, you know, and the Beatles as well playing into their whole thing. So, you know, Got Live If You Want It, I thought was an interesting record. It shows a band with real high energy, and I love the audio cues as well within this record. There's a lot of screaming, and you kind of get that vibe of that 60s kind of era of England and live performances. So I thought that was really cool. It's not over the top screaming like the Beatles had, of course, but it's still really good. Kicking things off with Under My Thumb, fantastic track. Goes off to Get Off on My Cloud, Lady Jane, and some other tracks. It's only a short one as well, actually. I've got to make a mention to that. It's only 33 minutes long. So if you're looking for a live one to go back to from the Rolling Stones, and you've listened to all the other ones, get the yah-yahs out and all this stuff, which is another great album as well by them. Maybe go back to Got Live if you want it, because it just takes it back just a little bit longer. And of course they finish things off with I Can't Get No Satisfaction, really going into that one. So yeah, it leans into their kind of poppy sounding affairs with a few tracks, but again, it's leaning into also more of their own songs that they wrote. So yeah, go check that one out if you want. It's an interesting one. The other album that I was listening to just today, actually, was 9 Inch Nails' Up the Downward Spiral. And this record, I know, what an eclectic mix of stuff I've been listening to this morning. But yeah, 9 Inch Nails' Up the Downward Spiral, and one of the most Goliath records to come out of the whole industrial metal scene, of course. The Downward Spiral, I should say. But, it's just one of those records that... This was the first album I bought by them, and I purely bought it because everyone was suggesting it, and I'm glad that I did decide to go and check this one out, because the Downward Spiral is a fantastic record. You can't go wrong with it, from the opening mix to Self-Destruct to Piggy, Piggy, that's like mixing the two tracks together, a Piggy and Heresy. But anyway, March of the Pigs and all these other songs that are just absolute bangers. Ruiner, Reptile, The Downward Spiral, of course, I Do Not Want This. Just absolutely phenomenal album that is so weird, eclectic, and blends a fair few styles together. Well, not styles, it blends a fair few production methods. There's just a lot of different trials and tribulations on this album. So I thought that was pretty interesting to go back to, and one that I hadn't gone back to in a long time. The other thing as well I wanted to mention is I haven't played the album The Pretty Hate Machine. I've never listened to it in full. I think I've listened to all the other albums post The Downward Spiral, except for the very first one. And I want to know, is it worthwhile? Should I go back and listen to that album? I imagine that a lot of people are already typing on their keyboards going, yes, you should. How are you missing out on that? Why haven't you listened to it? I've heard tracks off the record. I've definitely heard tracks off that record, but I've just not listened to the album as a whole. So anyway, should I go back and check out and hear Pretty Hate Machine? That's the big question that I have for you guys out there. And of course, the last album that I listened to for this week, or noteworthy one, was the Linkin Park record From Zero. We mentioned obviously it was coming out, and it had a lot of hype surrounding that record because it's Linkin Park. It's got the new single with Emily Armstrong. I've done a review on it, so if you want to check that out, do so. I was also part of a panel, and we discussed whether or not it was that bad. And it was a very, I said at the beginning of my review, this is going to be the most divisive album that's going to come out this year, mark my words. And I can confirm, this is the most divisive album that has come out this year. Easily, hands down. Because, at the end of the day, you're replacing Chester Bennington, who can't be replaced. He's such an icon and a legend, especially within not only the band, but the community itself. And then you come across with this Emily Armstrong character, and you're like, why are you trying to replace him? But, like many people have already made and commented on, Emily's vocals are actually really good for the record, and I think she kills it. She does a great version of the vocals and stuff that she does on the album, but the weakest parts are the band themselves. It's obviously an age part, and maybe the fact that they've probably been out of the game for a few years as well, but Mike Shinoda isn't sounding too crash hot on there, and it's a bit of a letdown, because I always thought the biggest hurdle was going to be Emily, and then surprise, surprise, it's actually the other members of the band at the end of the day. And yeah, of course, they're getting on in age. Hell, they've been in the career for 25 plus years. So, they're not getting any younger. And of course, Emily is the young blood within the band. But it's just a weird situation. A lot of people have been singing its praises, saying it's the best thing they've ever heard. Others have been saying otherwise. I just wanted to have a quick look over to, Rate Your Music, because at the end of the day, That's people commenting and writing what you want to say in regards to the album, giving it a score. It's almost like Metacritic, I guess. Everyone's just coming together and rating what it is. And currently, this record sits at a score of 2.75 out of 3,000 reviews. Now, 2.75 is pretty average, if not a bit low, considering the scores that are on there. For reference, or a frame of reference, I should say, anything between, I guess, maybe 3.2 to 3.5 is, like, good. Obviously, depending on the higher you get. Anything above 3.6 is amazing. Like, it's a weird... That's just from what I've been seeing anyway across this whole website. You go to any of the big albums, and it's very rare you'll find any album over 4. Very rare. Especially, obviously, the more famous the album becomes and the band, because you're going to have more people reviewing it. There's going to be people that just want to hate bomb it at the end of the day anyway. Give it a 1 star because why not? Maybe create 5 different users to do the same thing. It's the public after all. But there are obviously people who are just going to be blinded and just write, oh, perfect score. So anyway, I just wanted to see quickly, and 2.75 is not a great score, but it's not the worst score. Let's see, I got this one here, for example, that's half a star. I'll be honest, I went into this with borderline negative expectations, but my god, this is a fantastic way to take a dump on the mostly great discography. I really hope the paycheck and Emily's boosted OT level was worth it. So yeah, that's an interesting aspect, I guess, and that's a lot of things, because it was a mixed bag. Look, I'm not going to give away. If you go over to Is It That Bad on the Chill Dude on the Couch, you can watch the full hour-long special that we did for the end of year album, and that was just that's a major discussion right there. But yeah, that was an album that I gave a few spins to. In summary, I thought it was alright. I enjoyed it for what it was. I wasn't expecting anything great, and that's what I got. I didn't get anything great. I got a pretty average album, and that's what I was expecting, really. So anything that would, sorry, I was actually expecting a terrible album. Maybe that's why. Even average is still better than, terrible. So, yeah, look, it wasn't too bad. It was not great, though, at the end of the day. So let's move on to, I guess, what is going on in the music world. And that is the first one we're going to be talking about here is Primus. And they're holding their open auditions for their drummer position. So, yeah, let's see here. Their CV states that they are seeking a well-mannered, affable individual with original sensibility and aesthetic, possessing a desire to open new doors in this creative world. So that's right, drummers, if you're out there and you're looking for a gig, a little hustle or something, try out for Primus, everyone. Because it looks like, obviously, of course, Alexander, he quit the band. Tim Alexandra, that was. He quit the band rather abruptly, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. Apparently he gave plenty of reason to the band, of course, but either way, because they're going to be going on tour soon with Pussifier and A Perfect Circle next year, they need a new drummer. And they're going to need some time also to break them in and obviously warm them up to how they perform. So this is going to be an interesting one to find someone in time. They'll probably just find maybe a session drummer or someone in the meantime if they need someone in a pinch. And obviously with Pussifier and Perfect Circle, they're going to be performing the new music that they wrote, because they did an album. All 3 of these bands wrote an album earlier this year. I haven't done a review on that. I haven't even listened to it, to be honest. I think it's going to be too bloody weird, because Primus is one of those bands that are just really odd, eclectic, and just a bit beyond my taste in music, I suppose. Sorry, and I just can't really get into them outside of the singles. Some really cool songs that they have, but at the end of the day, they're just a bit too weird for me. There was another one I saw here, which is these bands are the big 4 of nu metal according to you. There was a poll done, and this is over at Metal Injection, in regards to, of course, the big 4 of nu metal. If you're not aware, the big 4 is a term that was derived out of the thrash metal community, in particular relating to, of course, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, and Metallica, the quote-unquote big 4 of the thrash metal world. And it's gone across to several other areas as well. They're gone, the big 4 of the Teutonic thrash metal bands, big 4 of grunge, several other ones. Of course, why not? Let's go check out the big 4 of nu metal. Can you make guesses I'm going to guess, obviously, Korn's here because the photo's there, and Korn created pretty much nu metal. Limp Bizkit's got to be the other one, I'm going to guess. As for the other two, that's going to be interesting. Probably Deftones, I don't know. People will be pissed off by me commenting Deftones and nu metal in the same sentence, but anyway, let's check this out. So, who are we going to have? We're going to have Korn, of course, the top. They got 13,000 votes as well for being on the Big Four. So Slipknot, okay, that makes sense. Slipknot would also make the Big Four. Now I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off as well about that. Any of these bands really can annoy a lot of people as far as it comes into it. But Slipknot were back in the early days, at least, they were nu metal. And you gotta understand though, nu metal is a very umbrella term that, as far as musicians that came around the late 90s and 2000s and played heavy metal or just metal in general, they kind of fell under as well. And Slipknot are one of those bands that really transient between the lines, as far as, like, their early sound was nu metal, but they proceeded to move on, like many other bands in this field as well. They proceeded to move on and evolve their sound. Slipknot was easily the heaviest of the quote-unquote nu metal bands, so I guess you could call them the slayer of that band. You know, I don't know where Korn sits. Maybe Korn would be Metallica, because they're the most famous of them all. I don't know, but yeah, Slipknot would have to be the slayer of the band. Of course, Limp Bizkit sits there with 9,400 votes, and they're got to be the Anthrax, because, you know, the band's a joke at the end of the day, but damn, were they just awesome. And creating an image just is amazing. You got that backwards red cap, of course, the goatee, and that is Limp Bizkit. The imagery, the imagery is right there. Everyone just donning red caps, and that's it. It's game over. The guy, Fred Durst, is a genius as far as I'm concerned, in particular for creating an image, making it last, and even the music that they write. I think it's great. They just play into their thing. They play into their angle a lot. The last one is going to be Linkin Park. Interesting there. Okay, so Linkin Park's going to be the last of the Big Four nu metal bands. I'd agree with that. Of course, the first two albums are very much that nu metal. Hell, Hybrid Theory is probably the best nu metal album that was ever released, hands down, because they took what was in the early days, what people wrote, and just perfected it. And such, when it came to Hybrid Theory, there it was, this perfect bloody record that is, it's amazing. It's my childhood, it's my youth right there. But like many people would probably say, that nu metal also didn't age incredibly well. So I just wanted to also mention this news article right here, and it's also mentioning nu metal albums that that aged incredibly well. So these are 10 nu metal albums that aged incredibly well. This is interesting because a lot of the albums did not. It's like disco, once it died, that was it. Fantastic, just get it out of the way and let it go on to greener pastures, I suppose. Now, the first one I'm mentioning is Maximum the Hormone. Boo, I can't pronounce that. Anyway, it's a 2007 album. I do not know this band. I don't know anything. Can't comment in regards to that one. So skip. Mudvayne LD50. 100% hands down. LD50 is an amazing album. And Mudvayne is just phenomenal. Of course, with Ryan Martini, who does these amazing bass lines that we just can't fathom. I don't think, he makes. I want to say he runs rings around Fieldy, but I know a lot of people will be annoyed by that comment. But let's face it, Ryan Martini, he is an amazing bassist. So yeah, LD50 was the biggest the biggest album that they did, and probably their magnum opus, I'd say. And it does hold up incredibly well. I might go one step further and say that I think the album that went better than LD50 and still holds up to this day is going to be their next record. I think it was The End of All Things to Come. Because if there's one thing that shows a nu metal album and its age, it's got to be those little sound effects that are always in between songs and such. Once you hear those, you can't really. It was part and parcel of that time frame, I guess, that era. And there's always those little tracks. I think it was like what was it called? Cradle or something like that. Anyway, there were little sections in between certain tracks playing sound effects. And that was just one of those things. So I'd say, yeah, look, LD50 has aged well. I'd probably say The End of All Things is maybe better, but whether or not you consider The End of All Things a nu metal album, that's the thing. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Nu metal, in particular, when it comes to, obviously, the bands, a lot of them just changed. And The End of All Things is just one of those albums, for example. LD50, nu metal. The End of All Things to Come goes into prog metal territory, really. So, yeah, LD50, let's say yes. Obviously, it's aged perfectly fine over its time. So, Snot, Get Some, next one. I would have to say, I'm not overly familiar with Snot and their material. I know some of the tracks, but this is one of those bands that a lot of people obviously point to. I think they're like the underdogs as far as the nu metal scene, I guess. And I think, was it Lynn Strait, the original vocalist? He passed away some years ago as well, which not obviously didn't help. But yeah, so Get Some was the record, of course, with the bulldog or something, that dog on the front cover, and that tennis ball or lemon that is on top of his nose. And I think originally it started off, it was like the dog was barking or something. Anyway, but yeah, look, I have also heard news that it looks like Snot is actually coming out and replacing Lynn Strait. They're coming out after all these years to either tour or record a new album. I can't remember. I just heard something about Snot obviously coming back together. So that'll be interesting. Get Some. Look, I've listened to that album a couple of times and it hasn't really particularly taken my fancy, but still is a pretty solid album every time I listen to it. Incubus Science, shit. I was just talking about that as far as, oh my god, timing. I swear I did not read this article before I mentioned the album that I listened to. But yeah, Incubus Science is mentioned here, and yes, it is a great album that has survived the test of times as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to go any further in regards to it. We talked about that record just at the beginning of this. So, Nothing Face Skeletons, I'm sorry, I don't know who they are. Nothing Face Skeletons, though, gets a mention here for their 2003 release. Static X, Wisconsin Death Trip. Oh, yes. This is why I always refer to nu metal as that umbrella term, because if you're going to count Static X as nu metal, and I probably would, they're more on the industrial side of things, and that's the weirdest part, because Static X is industrial, and then there's other bands that'll be more progressive or shoegaze and all this, and there's a lot of bands at the end of the day who has various influences. It's pretty much just taking metal and then taking another genre and just making it their own. At the end of the day, all these big bands were just taking metal and a subgenre and then making a record out of it. And that's what you get when you have Static X, when you have Korn, when you have all these other bands out there, Deftones, whatever. Like, it's a mixture of the Cure almost meets metal, and that's what you get. So yeah, Static X, Wisconsin Death Trip, amazing album. I went and saw them, I think it was doing the 20th anniversary of the Wisconsin Death Trip, so that was with Zero as the vocalist there. But yeah, push it, I was stupid and bled for days. Fantastic. And I'm going to go back and listen to that this week. I'm going to mention that next episode for sure. Yeah, Bled for Days, amazing one. Seven Dust, Animosity. Seven Dust is not a band that I really listen to a lot, but Animosity is the album that I actually first got by them. And while I wasn't blown away by what I was listening to, I was at least impressed. It wasn't the worst things I've ever listened to. And they're really good as far as, the track. I think it was Christmas Day. Yeah, Christmas Day is just, oof, that was a weird song. I can't say anything really positive about their more recent times, but whatever. At the end of the day, it is what it is. This is a good mention for the next one. Sunk Loto, Between Birth and Death. We're talking about Australia here, because Sunk Loto was a band that was in the Australian nu metal scene, and a band that I think not a lot of people know about, and they really should get mentioned a lot more. Between Birth and Death is just that. It is this nu metal bludgeoning album that, oh my god, yeah, it just is amazing. They go into that rap territory, of course, in certain sections, but then at the end of it, they're still blending metal into the influence, and that's really just amazing. Everything, Every Way, Starved were both good tracks off that one. So if you haven't listened to Sunk Loto, definitely recommend it. It's LOTO, in case you were just confirming that. Highly recommend that band, because they are such an underdog within the Australian metal community. But people who are in the know, they know. And they're like, yep, a great album. Amen by the self-titled record. Okay, you can instantly hear why Ross Robinson wanted to work with these guys. Hailing from Los Angeles, I don't know who Amen are. But anyway, so yeah, just listen to Drive. What is this, Incubus? And tell us they didn't deserve mainstream radio play. I've listened to Incubus Drive, does that count? So, I don't know. Never heard of Amen's Amen. No commentary in regards to that one there. But, System of a Down and their self-titled record, the first one, that's right. So, of course, a lot of people would pick Toxicity, but we all know it's a good album. and yes, what I've also mentioned here in that section as well. Everyone knows Toxicity is good, survived the test of time, but what about the debut album? Yes, it does. There's no System of a Down album that hasn't aged, anywhere except for amazingly. There's no bad album actually by System of a Down. And I covered them, of course, for an episode of Worst to Best as well, talking about it. So, yeah, look, the debut album, fantastic. You got to go back and listen to it. It's one of those kind of caught in an error, storm in a teacup scenarios. So yeah, it's very interesting to go back and listen to that first album. Hear the raw passion and the energy compared to the more, I wouldn't say polished, but I guess refined energy that was found on the next album, Toxicity. This is just unbridled chaos at this point. Here we are. It's like giving some kid with ADHD a shitload of sugar and just letting him run amok and seeing what he does. And then eventually that sugar burn off starts, and that's the sugar burn off is Toxicity. But when they first started, absolute unbridled chaos, I think, would probably be the perfect way to sum it up. So check it out. Even the live performances, holy crap, if you watch the live performances, they're just amazing. The next one we're going to be talking about is Coed and Cambria, who have announced the Vaxxus Act 3, and it's going to be called The Father of Make Believe. They're also going to be doing, of course, this album is going to be published, where are you? March the 13th, it looks like. Not bad. Now, I just recently saw Coed and Cambria just a couple of weeks ago, actually, and they were performing their album. The album in question was the one that was celebrating the 20th anniversary. That I'm just Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4 Volume 1, From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness. I can never remember the entire album's name. I always just called it Good Apollo, Gotta say, if you were catching Coed and Cambria doing the 20th anniversary of that, you are in for a treat. That album is not only phenomenal, but of course has one of the best opening tracks, plural, as far as Coed and Cambria have ever written. Of course, with Always and Never and Welcome Home, and then 10 Speed of God's Blood and Burial. I think and of course, Keeping the Blade, that little fantastic instrumental piece. So those 4 tracks, you're right off to a great start. And at least as far as the concert that I went to, they did a couple of tracks as well off In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth, which of course was a Favor House Atlantic, and I'm so happy they did that. I called it. I said, my friend was like, oh, do you reckon they might do an encore? I said, if they do, they're going to be playing a Favor House Atlantic. But that was the only track that I was expecting, and then they said, oh yeah, well, we're going to be doing a couple of tracks, plural. So they did a Favor House Atlantic, and then they did In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, and that is probably my second favourite track off that album. So yeah, I was absolutely blown away by not only the performance, they've still got it, of course, but also the song selection that they chose for the ending there. So I was very happy in regards to what they have. Now, I'm looking at the artwork here for the Coed and Cambria, The Father of Make Believe. And, of course, there is 2 songs that are released. We've got Blindside Sunny, I believe that was actually released a little while ago. But also Searching for Tomorrow. Very intriguing. And the album artwork, of course, has that face that was on the Vaxxus 2 album. the kid there, and it looks like a black hole or something like that. If you've seen Interstellar, that's exactly what that little star. It's like that bendy star black hole design that was in Interstellar. Not design, I should say. I think it was actually proven or theoretically proven, and then they made it into a visual for the movie. I know a lot of scientists have been talking about it as like they point to it like this is it. This is what it looks like. Anyway, the Father of Make Believe album uses that visual image, except it's all red and it looks badass. Like that is just threatening. Just a menacing looking record, and yeah, I'm gonna be listening to that one there. I gotta listen to that single, so that's gonna be very interesting. Yes, very keen to be hearing what they put out, because I thought Vaxxus 2 was a really good record. I wasn't huge on the Unheavenly Creatures. Thought that one was a bit long-winded at the end of the day. I think Vaxxus 2 was kind of more perfect, a bit more grounded. It's only 53 minutes long compared to the other one, which is an hour 20. This one seems to have, how many tracks? 14 tracks. That could be a bit long. That's a bit of a worry, isn't it? But that's Coed and Cambria for you. So anyway, new Coed and Cambria, people. Keep an eye out for that in the next coming months. There was a story here as well as far as Kirk Hammett getting his first flying V and how did it all start. To pretty much sum it up, it all started at Burger King because he had a job. I mean, that's a surprise, isn't it? I don't know. Why? Actually, hang on. Burger King. Isn't that a oh no, sorry. I get confused because you Yanks, you call it Burger King, and I'm looking at the image, and I'm thinking to myself, hang on, that's the Australian version. No, the Aussie version is actually Hungry Jack's. So if you came to Australia and you were looking for a Burger King, you're not going to find a Burger King. But you will find these other places called Hungry Jack's, exact same artwork, all that crap, and it is the exact same thing. I don't know the full story, but we just call it Hungry Jack's. Fuck knows why. But anyway, Burger King. Yeah, he had a job, surprise, surprise, when you make money as a part-time worker back in school days or whatever, and you just have nothing else to do, you're going to spend it on, I won't say dumb crap. A flying V was a perfect investment as far as Kirk Hammett's involved. But yeah, surprise, surprise. You get a job, you got money, you can spend it on stuff. I'm just a bit more surprised, I guess, this whole thing seems to take place over what appears to be a 7-minute reading article. Anyway, I guess they're gonna talk crap, but whatever. The next one we're gonna looking at here, it says Tron Ares, the director of sorry, let me restart that. The director of Tron, the newest one that's gonna be coming out, it's called Ares, I believe. Wasn't that also a streaming P2P platform back in the day? Maybe it was. Anyway, the director says that 9 Inch Nails are doing the soundtrack and it is grittier and more industrial. That's intriguing to hear because obviously I love my 9 Inch Nails and I don't know what they mean by grittier. Do they mean it's more like the Downward Spiral or something like that? Not entirely sure. But it's going to be interesting to hear. I didn't even know they were working on the new Tron movie, to be honest. I thought the other one was a bit of a... I mean, actually, that's a very big step. Thinking back, because they had Daft Punk as the original musicians doing the soundtrack for that record. So you're talking about going from this electronica duo to an industrial metal sounding affair. It sounds like they're going to be, I don't know, a disheveled dystopian kind of appeal to the movie. It's like Mad Max set in the future, except in a computer. I don't know. That's interesting. But I actually thought the film series was dead and buried. Like, the first one came out, or the first reboot came out, and I don't think they made it was financially viable, I should say. So I didn't know they were working on it, but okay, that's good to hear, I guess. Maybe that's something to watch out for in the future. Could be interesting. Could be a good way to spend 2.5 hours, who knows. But anyway, I'll be more curious about the soundtrack at the end of it. Another piece of news that came out was Otep Shamaya is retiring from music, people. I'm not familiar with Otep, the band. I know that a lot of people are saying that, thank fuck this is the case because they don't like her music. I know a lot of Opeth fans also are saying that thank you that they are retiring because Otep, always getting confused with Opeth. How? I mean, if you're searching for it, Opeth, it's a different letter. Anyway, but there's a lot of people just saying, yay, thank you for doing that. She's pretty much just quit on the spot, liquidating all her collection of music and equipment, and is interested for anyone out there who are going to be doing their things if they want to purchase stuff. So there's going to be a reason to come out later this year. I'll keep an eye on this story because, I'm not going to be entirely biased towards one way or another because I don't know the musician. But yeah, OTEP is retired, everyone. So anyway, the other one as well we're going to be looking at is Australian Death Machine Austrian Death Machine drummer is the latest to join the Tim Lambesis mass exodus. This comes off the back, of course, of As I Lay Dying and the 3 band members who quit just a couple of weeks before the album has been released. So yeah, now this is the side project, Austrian Death Machine, which features Tim Lambesis, and the drummer has just left. So I thought I'd just want to give a mention there because the shit seems to continue hitting the fan as far as it comes to Tim Lambesis, and what a shame. It couldn't have happened to a much more decent human, isn't that right? Who knows? But it's happened, hasn't it? And that brings a close, I guess, to the news side of things. Let's go and talk quickly about what is going to be the newest releases that's coming out as of today. And because there is a lot of big releases coming out this year. This year. There's been a lot of big releases this year. There's a lot of releases that are coming out today that are absolutely big. The first one I'm going to give a shout out to is going to be Marilyn Manson, One Assassination Under God, Chapter 1. That's right, Chapter 1, which means there's going to be another chapter as well that'll be following that up. And it's going to be an interesting piece. This is Marilyn Manson's first work since We Are Chaos, and that was an album that came out, I think it was, 2020, so 4 years ago. And of course, it's the first album that has been released since, obviously, all the big accusations that came around. And it's going to be interesting. From what I've heard in the music, it's not a bad sounding album. So I'm very curious to hear this record. I'm definitely going to be doing a review on this one, and that'll be out, later today by the time this episode comes out as well. So One Assassination Under God. I'm very keen to be listening to this album and see what the musician has been working on in lately, because I think this is going to be really cool. The other big one that we want to give a shout out to, of course, is going to be Opeth as well, and their album, The Last Will and Testament, the 14th album by them. And it's going to have some really weird track names here, because it looks like it's just got £1, £2, all the way to £7, and then, of course, a story never told. I thought that was an interesting way to do it. But yeah, it's I'm not entirely sure. I think that perfectly sums it up here. But anyway, that's going to be a big one. I have a funny feeling, just going to call out now, that album might make my top 10 albums of the year. And I've been holding off recording that episode purely because of these 2 records that I just mentioned. Because I want to give a chance and say, alright, maybe these records are going to be something that I might need to add to my list. So I'm going to hold off from doing that episode. But I have done my episode as far as the worst albums of the year. So I might have to edit that one soon. The other ones as well we got is Ocean Grove, which is the Aussie group that is a new metal core band that formed in 2010. They released their album Oddworld. Want to give a shout out to Aussie rockers, Ocean Grove. Make sure you go forth and check them out. I'm going to be hitting them up as well. The other one as well is Van Zant, of course, the brother of Ronnie Van Zant, and he's doing a solo album, Always Look Up. So, obviously that comes off the back about last year when Gary Rossington died, and, I guess that's all going to be a record that's kind of talking about that, and it would be interesting to check out. Van Zandt, not entirely sure who the musicians are on that one, but I'll be interested, I guess, to hear what they have to say. And also, Kim Deal has a solo album, Nobody Loves You More. That's Kim Deal, the bassist from the Pixies. Or the original bassist, I should say. The Pixies actually released an album just a couple of weeks ago, which I didn't really like. I've still got to review it, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I guess if I have to. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one there. What were the few other ones that I was reading? There was a few other mentions here. There's a lot of reissues and blah blah blahs. 10,000 Years, All Quiet on the Final Frontier. What else was there? Last Temptation, Heartstarter. Yeah, there's a Marillion album, The Strange Engine, which is a re-release, and Polar, 5 Arrows, Sunstorm, Restless Fight, and Xandria Universal Tales, that's an EP, that's off the Napalm Records one. So anyway, big names coming out with big records today. Make sure to go forth and listen to those albums because, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting time. But thank you for checking out this episode again. Like I said, if I don't have a name for this one yet, be curious if you could give me, something to work with. What do you think I should name this show? Because I have absolutely no idea. I'm just waffling on, talking absolute and utter shite at the end of the day, just discussing my thoughts and processes to the tens of people who are going to be watching this. So thank you very much for doing so. I hope you have a great day. Listen to some awesome albums out there and stay spicy as always. Take it easy.